faded brown coat watches her with eyes that don't flinch away. His face carries its own map of loss. Deep lines around gray eyes that have seen too much, shoulders that bear invisible weight. While others see a monster, he sees something else entirely. $50. The crowd turns, surprised. The auctioneer's eyebrows shoot up like startled birds. Did you say 50, Mr. Kane? The man in the brown coat steps forward, his boots steady on the dusty ground. I said $50. Whispers slice through the air like knives. That's Jacob Kane. Lost his wife and daughter last winter. Grief's made him soft in the head. $50 for that scarred thing? Man's lost his mind along with his family. But Jacob Kane doesn't hear the whispers. His eyes stay locked on hers, and for the first time in 7 years, she doesn't look away. Something in his gaze tells her he understands silence. He knows what it feels like when words die in your throat. Going once, going twice. The auctioneer's voice fades as blood rushes through her ears like a river in flood. The gavel falls with finality. Sold to Jacob Kane for $50. Her legs nearly give way. $50. More than anyone has ever thought she was worth since the fire stole everything beautiful about her. Jacob climbs the platform with slow, deliberate steps. The crowd watches, hungry for entertainment, waiting to see what the grieving rancher will do with his broken purchase. He reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a worn leather pouch, counting bills with hands that shake slightly. Hands that have buried the people they loved most. There's your 50, he says to the auctioneer, but his eyes never leave her face. The auctioneer pockets the money and starts to move away, but Jacob's voice stops him. The rope. What's that? Cut the rope from her wrists. Now see here, Kane. She's your property now, but these restraints are for everyone's safety. You don't know what kind of violence might be hiding under that. Cut the rope. Jacob's voice carries quiet authority that makes the auctioneer step back. With reluctant hands, the man slices through the hemp binding. The rope falls away like dead skin, leaving red marks around her wrists that tell stories of captivity. She flexes her fingers, feeling blood return to hands that have been numb for hours. Still, she doesn't speak. Words are dangerous things that can burn down everything you love. Jacob extends his hand toward her, palm up, waiting. Not demanding. Not forcing. Just offering. The crowd holds its breath. Someone whispers a bet about whether she'll bite him. But she sees something in his outstretched hand that makes her heart hammer against her ribs. The calluses speak of hard work, yes, but there's a gentleness in the way he holds his fingers. These hands have touched dying things with tenderness. These hands have closed the eyes of the beloved. Slowly, like a wild animal approaching water, she places her scarred hand in his. His fingers close around hers with the care of someone holding broken glass. Not to hurt, but to keep the pieces from cutting anyone else. Come on, he says softly. Let's go home. The word hits her like a physical blow. She hasn't had a home since flames devoured the only place she ever belonged. They walk through the crowd together, and she feels the weight of staring eyes like stones on her back. But Jacob's hand stays steady around hers, a lifeline in a sea of judgment. His wagon waits at the edge of town, pulled by an old bay horse that nickers softly when they approach. The leather seat is cracked from years of weather, and the wooden sides bear scratches that tell stories of hard use and harder times. He helps her up onto the seat with hands that know how to be gentle. She settles beside him, leaving space between them like a careful distance between hope and heartbreak. The horse knows the way home without guidance, clip-clopping down the dusty road that leads away from town and into the endless prairie. Grass waves on both sides like an ocean of green and gold, stretching toward mountains that rise in the distance like sleeping giants. They ride in silence for a long time. Not the empty silence of strangers, but the full silence of two people who understand that some truths can't be spoken with words. Finally, Jacob clears his throat. My name's Jacob Kane. I know you probably can't tell me yours right now, but that's all right. Names can wait. She turns to look at him, studying the profile of a man who bought a monster and treats her like she's made of precious things. I lost my wife and daughter 8 months ago, he continues, his voice rough around the edges. Fever took them both in the same week. Been living alone since then, and I'll tell you true, it's a hard thing, being the only voice in a house that used to be full of laughter. The words hang in the air between them like prayer flags in the wind. I don't know what happened to you, he says, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Don't know what stole your voice or marked your face. But I know something about loss, and I know something about silence. Maybe we can help each other remember what it feels like to be human again. Her breath catches in her throat. When was the last time someone spoke to her like she mattered? When was the last time someone offered help instead of judgment? The wagon crests a small hill, and his ranch spreads out before them like a promise kept. A simple wooden house sits in a natural depression, protected from prairie winds by a grove of cottonwood trees. A barn and several outbuildings cluster nearby like children gathering around their mother's skirts. But she can see the signs of neglect everywhere. Fences that need mending. A garden choked with weeds. Windows that haven't been cleaned in months. This is what grief looks like when it takes root in a place. Not much to look at right now, Jacob admits, following her gaze. Used to be prettier when there were more hands to tend it. The wagon rolls to a stop in front of the house, and Jacob climbs down, then turns to help her. But instead of just offering his hand, he does something that makes her heart skip like a stone on water. He looks directly at her scarred face and smiles. Not the careful, pitying smile people sometimes manage when they're trying to be kind. A real smile that reaches his eyes and says, I see you, and you are welcome here. This is your home now, he says, and the word home sounds different when he says it. Sounds like safety instead of memory. They stand together in the yard as the sun begins its descent toward the western mountains. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark calls to its mate, and the sound is so achingly beautiful that tears spring to her eyes without permission. Jacob sees the tears and something shifts in his expression. He reaches up, slowly, carefully, and touches the side of her face where the scars are deepest. His fingers trace the raised skin with reverence, the way a person might touch something sacred. There's no revulsion in his touch, no pity. Just recognition of pain shared between two souls who have walked through fire. Beautiful, he whispers, and the word breaks something open inside her chest. Her lips part. Air rushes into lungs that have forgotten how to shape sounds into meaning. And then, soft as falling snow, she speaks her first word in 7 years. Mama. The word hangs in the evening air like a bird learning to fly. Jacob's hand stills against her cheek, and she sees her pain reflected in his eyes, not as judgment, but as understanding. Mama, she whispers again, and this time the word carries all the weight of 7 years of silence. All the weight of a little girl's voice calling through flames. All the weight of hands that reached and grasped and found only ash. Jacob's own eyes fill with tears. Yes, he says, his voice breaking. She was beautiful too, wasn't she? And for the first time since the fire, she nods. The next morning smells like hope and wood smoke. She wakes to the sound of roosters calling through the pale light seeping through old curtains. Her bed is warm, tucked in the corner of a small room that smells faintly of cedar, dust, and lavender. There's a faded quilt wrapped around her, patched in places, hand-stitched. Her fingertips trail the seams. Someone once cared enough to fix this. The silence isn't heavy here. It feels patient, like it's waiting for her, not pressing down on her. Downstairs, the soft clang of a pan against cast iron echoes through the floorboards. She hears boots scraping across wooden planks, a chair sliding. Bacon sizzles. Her stomach growls, surprised at itself. Justens. The mirror near the door catches her. Her face, her scars, the long braid she slept on. She looks and doesn't flinch. Something Jacob said last night won't leave her. Beautiful. She doesn't believe it yet. But she didn't run either. She walks down the creaking stairs, slow, bare feet brushing warm floorboards. The kitchen is filled with the smell of breakfast, and sunlight cuts through the windows like golden threads. Jacob is at the stove, wearing the same brown coat over his shirt. When he hears her steps, he glances back. Smiles, not with surprise, but with something softer. You're just in time, he says. Fried the eggs too long. Hope you don't mind crispy edges. She doesn't speak. But she pulls out a chair, sits, and for the first time in years, accepts a plate handed to her without suspicion. They eat in silence. Not awkward. Just quiet. His presence doesn't ask her to fill the air. It just exists, solid, like the oak table between them. After a few bites, he leans back and studies her face. I need help fixing the north fence. And moving the cattle to pasture. You feel up for it? She pauses, unsure. Then she nods. Slowly. He doesn't cheer or thank her. Just stands, scrapes his plate and says, "We'll take it slow. It's a rough trail." Outside, the air is crisp, the wind smelling of sage and dry grass. The ranch stretches around them, wild and unfinished. Tools lay scattered. The barn roof sags at one corner. A wheelbarrow rests on its side, half filled with rusted nails. And yet, it feels like a place that's trying to live again. She helps carry lumber, her arms still strong from years of labor. Jacob watches the way she moves, efficient, careful, quiet. When the wire snaps in her grip and slices across her palm, she doesn't cry out. Just stares at the blood like it's a stranger. Jacob is at her side instantly. He wraps a clean cloth around the wound and holds her wrist gently in his rough hand. "You don't have to be made of stone," he says. "Not here." Their eyes meet. Something opens, just a crack, and then closes again. But the seed has been planted. By late afternoon, sweat clings to her neck and her shirt sticks to her back. She drinks water from the tin canteen he offers and wipes her mouth with the back of her hand. He sits beside her on the slope, both of them watching the cattle shift lazily across the open pasture. "My daughter," Jacob says after a while, his voice distant. "She used to brush them like they were pets. Thought she could teach one to sit. That steer nearly crushed her twice. But she never stopped trying." He smiles at the memory, but his voice is tight. "She was 6. My wife called her a tornado in boots." He laughs softly, and it breaks something inside her again. Because she remembers laughter. Little feet chasing chickens. A mother's hands on her cheeks before bedtime. A father's song, always off-key. Jacob looks at her. "Do you ever see them? When you close your eyes?" She nods, blinking fast. "I do too," he says. "Sometimes I talk to them out loud. Makes me feel like they're still listening." She wants to speak. Her mouth even parts. But no sound comes. The words are still too heavy. That night, she lies in bed staring at the ceiling. She touches the scar near her eye where the beam fell. She hears the crackling of fire. The scream. The last time her mother called her name. She wakes crying. Not from fear. From remembering. In the barn the next morning, Jacob finds her already sweeping. When he calls her name, the one they gave her on the auction sheet, Abigail, she doesn't flinch. But she shakes her head. "You don't like it?" he asks. She hesitates, then presses her fingers to her heart. Slowly, she draws an invisible M in the air. He watches her hands, thinking. "M?" She nods. Then she brings her fingers to her lips and out again, signing a name. "May," he guesses. She shakes her head. Again she signs. Slower. "Mara." And for the first time, a tear slides down her cheek that doesn't come from pain. It's relief. He repeats it back to her. "Mara." And smiles like she's just handed him the most precious truth in the world. She closes her eyes and breathes deep. The barn smells of old straw, leather, and the faintest trace of lilac. He steps forward and, gently, reverently, touches her forehead with his hand. The same way he must have touched his wife's forehead as she lay dying. But this time, it's not a goodbye. It's a beginning. 2 weeks pass. Mara wakes each morning before the sun touches the windows, dresses in silence, and works beside Jacob like she's lived there forever. Her muscles ache in familiar ways. Her hands are covered in calluses again. The scars on her face are still there, but somehow, they feel lighter. Like they don't carry the same weight anymore. She still hasn't said another word. But she's listening now, to the wind, the animals, and to Jacob. Especially Jacob. He tells her stories while they work. Some make her laugh. Some make her cry without warning. And every time she wipes her tears, he pretends not to notice. But his hands move a little slower after. She catches him watching her sometimes, not in fear, not in pity, but with a kind of wonder. Like he's watching something grow back that he thought was dead. One night, they sit on the porch in silence, watching lightning flicker far off over the hills. The air smells of rain and dust and memory. Jacob sips coffee from a cracked mug and says softly, "I don't think you're broken, Mara." She doesn't respond, but she doesn't look away either. "I think you're healing." And healing doesn't look perfect. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes like scars. But it's still healing. She nods once. A tear slips down her cheek. And he doesn't wipe it away. He just lets it fall. 3 days later, the sheriff rides into the ranch. Dust trails behind him. His face is pinched, serious. Mara feels her whole body lock when she sees the uniform. Her breath shortens. Her hands instinctively curl into fists. Jacob meets the sheriff by the barn, arms folded. Mara stands by the fence, watching. "She's not safe here," the sheriff says, loud enough for her to hear. "There's a man from the city. Claims he knew her family. Says she caused the fire. Says she should have been locked away." Jacob's jaw tightens. He's wrong. "We don't know what happened, Jacob." "I do," Jacob says, voice low but firm. "You don't know what silence means to someone who's lived inside it." The sheriff glances toward her. "There's going to be a hearing. Then I'll testify." She can't speak for herself. Jacob looks back at Mara. And for the first time, she takes a step forward. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just one deliberate step. Then another. She walks past the sheriff, past Jacob, and into the house. She returns moments later with something clutched in her hands. An old, scorched locket blackened by fire. She places it in Jacob's palm. He opens it. Inside is a tiny photo, faded and worn, of a family, her family. 2 little girls. A mother smiling wide. A father behind them. And there's a note inside, barely legible, written in a child's shaky hand. "Mama told me to run. I tried to go back. But I couldn't save them." The sheriff sees it. And his face softens. For a moment, he doesn't look like a man of law. He looks like a man who's just remembered what mercy feels like. "I'll let them know she's safe here." He tips his hat. Rides off. Jacob closes the locket carefully, hands it back to her without a word. And that night, when they sit on the porch again, he finally asks the question he's held back for weeks. "Do you remember what you whispered the day we met?" She nods. He waits. Mara closes her eyes. And this time, her voice doesn't shake. She says, "Mama?" Jacob smiles. "And why Mara?" he asks gently. She stares out at the field. At the place where sun meets horizon. At the world she once believed would never welcome her again. Then she answers, "Because it means bitter." He tilts his head. "But you're not bitter." She looks at him. Eyes full of something new. Not fear. Not grief. Strength. "I was." She pauses. "But now, I think it means I survived." Jacob reaches for her hand. She doesn't pull away. "Thank you for seeing me." Then, if this story moved you, even just for a moment, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Stories that heal. Stories that remind us what it means to be human. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.